My name is Martha Ford. I am 74 years old, and I never imagined that my own flesh and blood would betray me over a pile of bricks and some bank accounts. I was not your typical old woman knitting baby clothes in a rocking chair waiting for death. I was a businesswoman, divorced for over 4 decades, who built her empire with the sweat of her brow and the calluses on her hands. My husband, a man who was only good for decorating bar stools, left when my only daughter, Ashley, was barely crawling. Since then, my world was divided in two: my fabric store, the Golden Needle, and my daughter. I thought I had built solid foundations on both grounds, but that windy afternoon, I discovered that one of those buildings was rotting from the ground up. It all started on a gray Tuesday, the kind that chills you to the bone and makes your joints ache. I was in the back room of the fabric store, checking an inventory of silk threads that had just arrived from the city. Despite my age, I refused to use a cane, and much less let anyone else handle my money. Ashley would always tell me, "Mom, just rest. Let Ryan and me take care of things." Ryan was her husband, a man with a snake-like smile and soft hands, the kind that have never touched a shovel or a brick. I distrusted his sickening sweetness, but out of love for my daughter, I bit my tongue and swallowed my venom. That Tuesday, I was climbing the wooden ladder to reach a box of antique lace that I kept on the highest shelf. It was a miscalculation, or maybe it was destiny making me pay for the arrogance of feeling young. The step creaked, my ankle gave out, and gravity did the rest. I fell like a sack of potatoes, hitting my hip against the solid oak counter before landing on the cold floor. The pain was not immediate. First came the dull sound of the bone striking, a crack that echoed in my ears louder than thunder. Then the world went black and white. I screamed. Of course I screamed. I screamed with the fury of someone who knows they have just lost their independence. Ashley appeared a few minutes later. They lived on the top floor of my house, a temporary arrangement that had already lasted 5 years. She came down the stairs with her phone in her hand, and upon seeing me lying there among spools of thread rolling across the floor, her face did not show panic, but a strange mix of calculation and opportunity. "Mom!" she exclaimed, but she did not drop to the floor to hold me. She stood there for a second, evaluating the scene. "Ryan, come down, my mom fell." The drive to the hospital was a fog of sharp pain in my right hip. I was in the back seat of Ryan's car, clenching my teeth to keep from crying, because Martha Ford did not cry in front of anyone. They were whispering in the front seats. I could not hear the exact words, but the tone was not of anguish. It was of nervous excitement. Upon arriving at the emergency room, the diagnosis was quick: a broken hip. I needed surgery, rest, and rehab. The doctor, a young man with dark circles under his eyes, like someone who has not slept in days, explained the procedure to me in a monotone voice. I just nodded, dazed by the painkillers that were already starting to circulate through my veins. That was when Ashley approached the stretcher. She took my hand, that same hand that had wiped her tears and paid for her whims so many times, and she dropped the sentence that would seal my immediate fate. "Mom, do not worry about a thing," she said, stroking my knuckles with a softness that gave me chills. "You just stay here until you get better. The doctor says you need absolute rest. We will take care of everything at home, the fabric store, the cats, the bills. You just rest." "The safe?" I babbled, trying to sit up, but the pain pinned me back against the mattress. "Shh, Mom, Ryan will handle it. Everything is going to be fine." They gave me a kiss on the forehead, a cold, dry kiss, like the brush of a dead fish, and they left. I watched their backs walk away down the green linoleum hallway, and a sharp pang in my chest hurt more than the broken hip. In that moment, I wanted to believe them. I wanted to be the trusting mother who surrenders to the care of her offspring. "Raise ravens, and they will peck out your eyes," my grandma used to say, but I refused to think that my Ashley was a raven. The first 2 days in the hospital were a torture of loneliness. My surgery was a success. I woke up in a shared room with a lady who would not stop praying the rosary out loud. I looked at the door every time it opened, hoping to see my daughter with a thermos of coffee or a change of clean clothes, but only nurses came in with trays of tasteless food and sharp needles. On the third day, I borrowed a phone from the nurse on duty, a sturdy woman named Nancy who looked at me with pity. I dialed Ashley's number. Voicemail. I dialed Ryan's number. Voicemail. I called the landline at the house. My house. It rang and rang and rang until the line disconnected. They must be really busy taking care of the business, I told myself, trying to put out the ember of suspicion that was starting to burn in my stomach. The fabric store takes up a lot of time, and with my accident, they are surely overwhelmed. But the 5th day arrived, and then the 6th. The lady with the rosaries got a visit from 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and even a smuggled dog. I, Martha, the owner of the biggest fabric store in the neighborhood, did not even have a clean pair of socks. The shame started to weigh on me heavier than the cast. I would tell the nurses that my daughter was traveling, that she had a lot of work, making up excuses to cover the nakedness of my abandonment. Mrs. Ford, you need someone to bring you clothes for when you get discharged, Dr. Stevens told me on his morning rounds on the 8th day. Has no one come? They will come, doctor. It is just that the business, I lied, looking away toward the window where the rain was beating against the glass, washing the city, but not my sorrow. The 10th day was the breaking point. Dr. Stevens signed my discharge papers. You are recovering very well, Mrs. Ford. You are made of tough wood. You can go home now, but you need rest and help moving around. Should we call your family? I felt a lump in my throat that made it hard to breathe. I had spent 10 nights staring at the ceiling, 10 days eating flavorless Jell-O, 10 days waiting. I knew, with that bitter certainty that comes with age, that they were not coming. If they had not come when I was bedridden and vulnerable, they would not come now that I was being discharged. Do not worry, doctor, I said, straightening my neck with whatever dignity I had left. My son-in-law is on his way, but there is a lot of traffic. I will wait for him in the lobby. I lied again. I got dressed in the exact same clothes I had arrived in 10 days ago, a wrinkled wool skirt and a blouse with a dried blood stain on the side. My body hurt when I moved. Every step with the walker was a reminder of my fragility, but the rage worked as the best painkiller. I dragged my feet down to the lobby. I did not wait for anyone. I walked out to the street where the fresh afternoon air hit my face. I raised my hand and hailed a beat-up taxi. The driver, an older man with a gray mustache, helped me get in with a kindness that my own family had denied me. 42 Oak Street, I instructed him. Are you just getting out of the hospital, Mother? He asked, looking at me through the rearview mirror. Yes, and I am not your mother, I replied dryly, cutting off any attempt at conversation. I needed silence to scheme, to understand, to prepare myself. The ride took 20 minutes. 20 minutes where my mind went over every gesture from Ashley, every word from Ryan, every silence from these past 10 days. What could have happened? A fire? A robbery? Why this dead silence? The anxiety was slowly turning into a cold stone in my stomach. When the cab turned the corner onto my street, my heart skipped a beat. I expected to see the metal security door of the Golden Needle pulled up, customers walking in and out. But what I saw made my blood run cold. The security door was down, completely locked up tight on a Tuesday at 4 p.m. And not only that, there was a sign taped to it, "Going out of business sale." "Looks like no one is there, ma'am," the taxi driver said, pulling up to the front of my house, that 2-story house painted in a warm yellow that had cost me so much to have painted just last year. "They are there," I whispered, noticing that Ryan's car was parked in the driveway, but in a strange way, backed up with the trunk open and pointing right at the front door. I paid the driver and rejected his help to get to the door. "I can manage on my own," I told him, and I did. With my walker squeaking against the sidewalk, I moved toward my destiny. The front door was closed but not locked. As I got closer, I noticed that the lock had been slightly jiggled, or maybe they just had not shut it properly in their rush. I pulled my set of keys out of my purse, the ones that had been with me in the hospital the entire time, and I opened the door stealthily. The silence inside the house was different from the hospital's. It was not a lonely silence. It was a conspiring silence. I stepped into the foyer. The smell of stale air and old pizza hit my nose, but it was the sight that stopped me dead in my tracks. They had not cleaned. They had not taken care of anything. In the hallway, cardboard boxes were stacked like unsteady towers. I recognized my things: my fine china, my hand-embroidered tablecloths, my father's collection of antique watches. All the boxes were marked with black Sharpie. Some said sell, others trash, and others Ryan. I felt my legs give out, and it was not because of the fracture. I leaned heavily on the walker, breathing heavily. I made my way into the living room. My furniture, those green velvet armchairs that Ashley always called old lady chairs, were gone. In their place, there were just empty spots in the dust on the floor, marking where my memories used to be. I heard noises upstairs, heavy footsteps, and laughter. It was them. They were on the top floor. "I am telling you, that lamp is worth at least $200. Ryan's voice boomed through the ceiling. "Oh, shut up and pack the jewelry before we are late meeting the moving truck guy," Ashley replied. Her voice held no remorse, just urgency. There it was, the naked, cruel truth. They had not left me in the hospital to take care of me. They had left me there to dismantle me. They thought the fall was the end, that I would go straight to a nursing home or the graveyard. 10 days. 10 days was all it took for them to try and erase 50 years of my life. A volcanic fury, hot and red, surged from my feet all the way to my throat. The pain in my hip vanished completely, replaced by an adrenaline rush I had not felt since the day I signed my divorce papers. I looked around. I saw my landline phone unplugged on an end table. I saw the paintings taken down. They thought old Martha was bedridden in a hospital, defenseless, waiting for charity. They did not know that the lioness had returned to her den and had found the hyenas devouring the scraps. With a movement that cost me a groan of pain, I shut the front door from the inside, locked the deadbolt, latched the safety bar, and slid the chain. Then I dragged a wooden chair, one of the few that were left, and wedged it right under the doorknob, just like my father used to do back in the day. I looked up the stairs. They were still up there, oblivious to the fact that their time was up. I did not call out to them. I did not scream. I simply sat down on the chair that was blocking the entrance. I placed my walker in front of me like a shield and waited. I knew that sooner or later they would have to come down with their loot, and when they did, they would run into something much tougher than a broken hip. They would run into the lady of the house. I took a deep breath, feeling the air fill my lungs with pure determination. My right hand tightened its grip on the handle of my cane, which I had retrieved from a nearby umbrella stand. My knuckles turned white. I was no longer the selfless mother or the spoiling grandmother. In that tense silence, listening to their greedy laughter on the floor above, I knew that war had begun. Sitting there, with my back pressed against the cold wood of the door and the walker serving as my trench, time seemed to stand still. The sounds from the second floor were not just noises. They were the soundtrack of my own autopsy. I could hear the dragging of furniture, that sharp screech of wooden legs against the floor that I myself had waxed for years, and every squeak felt like they were ripping off one of my fingernails. I did not go upstairs right away. My body, betrayed by gravity and patched up by surgeons, was screaming at me to give up, to drop to the floor and cry until I dried up. But Martha Ford's mind, the one that had negotiated with shady suppliers and survived economic crashes, lit up like an ember in the middle of a windstorm. The hip pain turned into a dull throb, a metronome keeping the beat of my new reality. "Come on, Ryan, be careful with that box. Grandma's china is in there," I heard Ashley say. Her voice came through muffled by the ceiling, but clear as day. "Which ones, those ugly shepherd figurines?" he replied with a mocking laugh that churned my stomach. "Those are worthless, woman. You better find where she hid the cash. Old folks always hide cash." Cash. The word floated in the stale air of the foyer. So that is what they were looking for. The fabric store and the house were not enough for them. They wanted the marrow. They wanted to squeeze out the very last drop of my hard work. I forced myself to stand up. The effort cost me a sudden wave of dizziness, black spots dancing in front of my eyes. But I clung to the handle of the cane until my knuckles cracked. I could not just stay at the door like a guard dog. I had to know how much they had destroyed, how much they had discovered. I had to take inventory of my disaster before baring my teeth at them. I walked down the dimly lit hallway. My steps were completely silent. I had learned to walk without making a sound back when my ex-husband used to come home drunk, and I did not want to wake the beast. Now, the beast was upstairs, looting my life, and I was the ghost wandering through the rubble. I walked into the small office I had next to the kitchen. It was my sanctuary, the place where I kept the books for the Golden Needle. What I saw made me hold my breath. The mahogany desk had all its drawers dumped on the floor, invoices, utility bills from 10 years ago, letters from suppliers. Everything formed a messy carpet of scattered paper. They had searched with desperation, with the clumsiness of greedy people who have no method. I walked over to the wall where my old calendar usually hung. They had ripped it off, probably looking for a wall safe. I smiled bitterly. They knew so little about me. Ryan and Ashley thought like cheap movie thieves. They thought that I, a woman born in the last century, would trust my treasures to a number combination hidden behind a picture frame. My gaze drifted to the corner of the room where my old Singer sewing machine sat, the one with the foot pedal, a wrought iron base, and a dark wooden table. It was covered in dust with a stack of old magazines piled on top. To them, it was trash, an old piece of junk that was too heavy to move and definitely not worth the effort of carrying down the stairs. I moved toward it, dragging my bad leg. I stroked the cold wood. That machine had been my first business partner, my first employee, my confidant. With it, I sewed wedding dresses to pay for Ashley's college tuition, that same college where she learned to look down on me. With trembling hands, not out of fear, but from the urgency, I removed the magazines. Under the machine's head, in a hidden compartment my father had taught me how to build when I was just a young girl, was my real-life insurance. It was not a digital safe. It was old-school carpentry engineering, invisible to the untrained eye. I pressed on a specific knot in the wood, right under the handwheel. There was an almost imperceptible click, and a small panel slid open. There it was. It was not stacks of cash, because paper rots and loses value. It was a blue velvet bag, heavy and dense. I pulled it out and opened it. The golden shine of the coins greeted me in the dim light. 50 pure gold coins. I had been buying them one by one, month after month, over the last 30 years. For my old age, I always told myself, for when my legs gave out. Well, my legs had given out, and old age had punched me right in the face, but the gold was still there. But there was something more important than gold in that compartment. I pulled out a thick manila envelope sealed with wax. Inside were the original deeds to the house and the store, and right next to them, a legal document I had drawn up 3 years ago, after a massive fight with Ashley, where she screamed that I was going senile. It was a notarized revocation of power of attorney, along with a life estate clause and a conditional will provision. I remember the day I went to see my lawyer, attorney Arthur Thomas. He looked at me over his glasses and said, "Mrs. Ford, are you sure? This is a very harsh move. If you sign this, your daughter will not be able to touch a single brick until you pass away. And if she shows ingratitude, not even then." I had hesitated. She was my daughter, my own blood. But that day, I signed it. And then, out of weakness, out of that motherly love that turns us foolish, I hid the document and tried to forget it even existed. I wanted to give her another chance. I wanted to believe I would never need to use that piece of paper. How naive you were, Martha, I whispered to myself, stroking the envelope. But how smart you were, too. Upstairs, a loud thud shook the ceiling. Something heavy had hit the floor. "You idiot!" Ashley yelled. "You broke the vanity mirror. That is 7 years of bad luck." "I do not care about luck," Ryan roared back. "Help me pick this up. Hey, did you call the real estate agent? They said they were coming at 5 to check out the storefront." My blood ran freezing cold. The real estate agent? At 5? I looked at the wall clock that, miraculously, was still hanging and working. It was 4:30. They were planning to sell the property. Or, at the very least, they were trying to sell the business rights, transfer it, pull some quick scam before anyone started asking about me. They had probably forged my signature, or were planning to use some old power of attorney they thought was still valid. My outrage gave way to absolute mental clarity. I no longer felt like the abandoned old woman in the hospital. Now I was the master of the board. They were playing checkers, but I was playing chess, and I had the queen right in my hand. I tucked the gold coins into the deep pocket of my wool skirt. The weight gave me security. It anchored me to the ground. I stuffed the envelope with the documents inside my blouse, right against my skin, close to my heart. I felt the friction of the paper acting like a suit of armor. I left the office and headed to the kitchen. I needed water. My mouth was as dry as a desert. I opened the fridge and the rotten smell hit me. There was 2-week-old food spoiling, sour milk cartons, vegetables turned into black liquid. I shut the door, holding back my nausea. They had not even done that. They had not even had the decency to take out the trash. They were living in filth, just waiting for me to die so they could clean up or sell everything exactly as it was. On the kitchen table, I spotted an open notebook. It was Ashley's handwriting. I moved closer. It was a list. Sell store inventory. $50,000. Clearance sale. Mom's jewelry. $20,000. Ryan's car. Down payment for new truck. $40,000. House. Quick sale or mortgage. At the very bottom of the page, a phrase underlined 3 times. Oakwood Retirement Home. Monthly fee. $8,000. There was my destiny, written out with her pink ink pen. A cheap nursing home. They were going to lock me in a room smelling of urine and bleach, while they bought themselves a brand new truck using my life's work. The tear that rolled down my cheek was not out of sadness. It was pure, distilled rage. It was the very last tear I would ever shed for Ashley. In that instant, the mother died, and the judge was born. They say children are just on loan to us, I thought, clenching my jaw. But assets are yours to keep, and God help anyone who tries to take mine away from me. I needed to make a phone call. I went over to the kitchen wall phone, unplugged, of course. I looked for the cord tossed behind the cabinet. With great difficulty, I bent down, letting out a groan that I bit back so I would not give away my position. And I plugged it in. I waited for the dial tone. Beep, beep. There was a line. Thank God the phone bill was set to auto-pay on my credit card, the one I always paid off right on time. I dialed attorney Arthur Thomas's number. I knew he would still be at his office at this hour. He was a man of habits, just like me. Thomas and Associates Law Firm, good afternoon. Arthur, it is Martha, I said, my voice sounding hoarse, unrecognizable even to me. There was a pause on the other end. Mrs. Ford, for heaven's sake, I have been trying to reach you for days. I went by the fabric store and it was closed up. Your son-in-law told me you went on a trip to a hot springs resort for your arthritis. A hot springs resort? I let out a dry, humorless laugh. Arthur, listen to me very carefully, because I do not have much time. I am at my house. I am not on any trip. I just got out of the hospital with a broken hip. What? But Ryan came in yesterday asking me for a copy of your deeds, claiming you had misplaced them and that he needed them for some urgent medical insurance paperwork. You did not give him anything, right? I asked, feeling my heart racing. Of course not, Martha. You know my lips are sealed. I told him that without you being present or a recent notarized power of attorney letter, I was not handing over so much as a paperclip. He got furious. He practically slammed his fists on my desk. I breathed a sigh of relief. I had allies. Loyalty, that rare currency, still existed outside of my family. Arthur, I need you to come over, right now. To your house? Yes. Bring your son, the one who is a police officer, and bring the revocation document, the original one. Martha, what is going on? You sound strange. I am being robbed, Arthur. My own daughter left me stranded in a hospital for 10 days so she could rob me blind. They are upstairs right now, packing up whatever is left. They think I am never coming back. I heard the scrape of a chair on the other end of the line. Arthur had stood up. I am on my way. I will be there in 15 minutes. Do not confront them, Martha. If they are capable of doing this, they are capable of anything. Do not worry, I said, looking up at the ceiling where the footsteps continued their macabre dance. I am not going to get into a fist fight. I am going to fight like what I am, the owner. I hung up the phone gently. 15 minutes. I had 15 minutes to set the stage. I looked around. The kitchen was a disaster zone, but I needed to reclaim my territory. I walked over to the half bath on the first floor. I washed my face with cold water, scrubbing away the grime from the hospital, the sweat from the trip, the dirt of being a victim. I looked at myself in the mirror. I was pale, with deep dark circles under my eyes and messy gray hair. I looked like a witch. No, I corrected myself. You look like a survivor. I pulled my hair back into a tight bun, just like I used to wear it whenever I had to deal with difficult suppliers. I smoothed out my blouse. I cleaned off the dried blood stain with a little water. I stood up straight, ignoring the sharp pain in my hip. I walked back into the living room. I dragged a chair over, not the one blocking the door, but a different one. A tall, straight-backed wooden chair that had belonged to my father. I placed it dead center in the foyer, facing the staircase. It was a makeshift throne right in the middle of the battlefield. I sat down. I rested my cane across my lap, gripping it with both hands as if it were a royal scepter or a sheathed sword. Upstairs, the noise stopped for a brief moment. "Did you hear that?" Ashley asked. "Hear what?" Ryan said. "It sounded like someone dragging something downstairs." "It is just rats, Ashley. This old house is full of rats. Hurry up. It is almost 5. You take the suitcases with the clothes downstairs. I will bring down the TV. What if Mom calls? She is not going to call. She has no phone. She has no money. She has nobody. Get that through your head, Ashley. Your mother is history. Now it is our turn." Hearing those words was the final ingredient I needed to harden my heart entirely. She is history. They had erased me. To them, I was just a roadblock that nature had conveniently removed. I closed my eyes for a second. I remembered the day Ashley was born. I remembered her first steps in this very house. I remembered when Ryan came to ask for her hand in marriage. And I, despite all my doubts, handed them a check for their honeymoon. I remembered every single sacrifice, every hour of overtime at the fabric store. Every Sunday, I refused to rest, just so they would never lack anything. And then, with one slow exhale, I let it all go. I let go of the motherly love that had blinded me. That love was a luxury I could no longer afford. I opened my eyes. My gaze locked onto the bottom step of the staircase. I was ready. I had the gold in my pocket, the legal papers on my chest, and the law on its way. For years, I had been tame. I was the silent provider, the one who solved problems by writing a check just to avoid conflict. But that woman had been left behind in that hospital bed, consumed by fever and disappointment. The woman sitting in her father's chair right now was something else entirely. She was Martha Ford, the founder of the Golden Needle, and she was about to teach the most important business lesson of her life. I heard Ryan's footsteps approaching the edge of the stairs. He was carrying a heavy load. I could hear his heavy breathing. "I am coming down," he yelled. "Go open the trunk of the car." "I am right behind you," she answered. I smiled, a cold, sharp smile. The stage was set. The lights were off, but I was shining with the force of 1,000 suns of justice. The only thing left was for the curtain to rise. "Come on down," I whispered into the shadows. "Come down and meet the boss." Ryan came down the first flight of stairs, huffing like an old ox, carrying my flat-screen TV, the one I had gifted myself last Christmas to watch my shows. His face was red from the effort and the rush, his eyes glued to his own feet so he would not trip. He did not see me. His greed had him completely blind, focused solely on getting the loot out before the clock struck the fatal hour. Behind him, I heard the unmistakable clinking of clothes hangers. Ashley was coming down with my fur coats, the ones I kept in mothballs for special occasions that rarely ever happened anymore. I remained completely still in my chair, with my hands crossed over the handle of my cane, mimicking the stiffness of a wax statue. The pain in my hip was a constant throb, a war drum keeping me alert, but my breathing was slow and controlled. I had learned in 50 years of doing business that whoever loses their cool loses the deal, and this was the most important deal of my life. When Ryan stepped onto the landing and turned to face the foyer, time seemed to freeze. He looked up, expecting to find an empty hallway and the front door ready for his getaway. Instead, he ran right into me. The effect was immediate and almost comical. His eyes bulged out of his head, his mouth fell open in a perfect, silent "oh," and his knees buckled. The TV tilted dangerously to the right. "Careful there, man," I said with a soft, almost sweet voice that sliced through the silence like a silk straight razor. "Do not go breaking my 5 o'clock shows." The television slipped right out of his sweaty hands. Ryan tried to catch it with a clumsy move, but gravity won the match. The device landed corner first on the hardwood floor, causing a loud crack of snapping plastic and shattering glass that echoed through the entire house. "Ryan, what did you break now?" Ashley yelled from upstairs, hurrying down the last few steps with her arms full of my coats and a shoebox of my orthopedic shoes tucked under her elbow. "I told you to be—" She stopped dead in her tracks when she hit the landing, right behind her husband. The coat slipped from her arms, forming a puddle of dark fur around her feet. She just stared at me as if she were looking at a ghost fresh out of the grave. And, in a way, she was. The mother she knew had died in that hospital bed. The person sitting in front of her was something else entirely. "Mom," she whimpered, her voice choked with panic. "But what are you doing here?" That was the moment. I could have screamed at them. I could have thrown my cane right at their heads. I could have spit their betrayal right in their faces. But anger is a liquor best served ice cold, so it does not burn your throat. I remembered my plan. I remembered that Arthur was on his way and I needed to stall for time. I needed them to drop their guard, to believe that the old woman was senile, confused, or better yet, grateful. I smiled. It was a smile that cost me every ounce of willpower, but I managed to make it look genuine, the warm smile of a grandmother seeing her grandkids come for a visit. "Oh, my sweet girl," I exclaimed, making the motion to stand up and letting out a very theatrical ouch of pain. "It is so good you are here. The doctor discharged me out of nowhere. He said they needed the bed for an emergency. I had to take a cab all by myself, poor me. But what a joy to see you both working so hard." Ryan and Ashley exchanged a quick glance, loaded with confusion and terror. They did not understand a thing. They were expecting fury. They were expecting tears. but they were absolutely not expecting such meekness. Their thief brains started working in overdrive, desperately searching for an excuse, a lie that would fit nicely with my supposed ignorance. Yes, Mom," Ashley stammered, the color returning to her cheeks, shifting from fear to pure cunning in a split second. We were so worried. We were actually going to pick you up first thing tomorrow morning." "It is just that," Ryan chimed in, wiping the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand and discreetly kicking aside the shards of the broken TV. "We were cleaning up, mother-in-law, for when you came back. We wanted the house to be completely clear, so you would not trip on anything." I looked around, letting my eyes sweep over the boxes clearly marked with "sell" and "trash." Ryan followed my gaze and turned ghost pale, but I just nodded, faking a level of naivety I never actually had. "How thoughtful you two are," I said with a sigh. "I always knew I had the best daughter and the best son-in-law in the whole world. Would you look at that, you even boxed up my china so it would not gather dust. You two are angels." I saw Ryan's shoulders relax. They had taken the bait hook, line, and sinker. They really believed the fall had knocked a few screws loose, that the pain and the heavy meds had scrambled my brains. Perfect. Nothing disarms an enemy faster than underestimating their opponent. "Sit down, kids, sit down," I ordered them, pointing to the worn-out sofa that was still left in the living room, even though they had stripped off the cushions. "I am so thirsty. Ashley, would you be a dear and get me a little glass of water? With this bad leg, I just cannot make it to the kitchen." Ashley hesitated. She knew the kitchen was a pigsty, that there were no clean glasses, that the fridge was a graveyard of rotting food, but she could not refuse without breaking the charade. "Of course, Mom, I am on it," she said, and darted toward the kitchen, dodging the stacked boxes. I was left alone with Ryan. He remained standing, awkwardly rubbing his hands together as if he were trying to scrub off an invisible stain. "So tell me, son," I said, looking him dead in the eye, those shifty eyes I had never liked. "How is the fabric store doing? I have been so worried these past 10 days. Did the silk thread shipment finally come in?" Ryan swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down nervously. "Oh yes, mother-in-law, everything is going swimmingly. In fact," he let out a nervous chuckle, "we have had incredible sales. People have been asking about you a lot, but we told them you were resting. The business has not stopped, I swear." "What a relief," I replied, squeezing the handle of my cane until my knuckles turned white. "I was afraid you guys had closed up or that the customers had gone to the competition. You know that the Golden Needle is my life. Without that store, I am nothing." "Do not worry about a thing," he said, gaining confidence from my supposed gullibility. "We will take care of it. Actually, we were thinking that now that you need to rest, maybe it would be good to, modernize a little bit." "Modernize?" I asked, tilting my head with curiosity. "Yes, well, Ashley and I thought that maybe selling the storefront and buying something smaller, something easier to manage, would be best for you so you can rest. With the money from the sale, we could pay for top-notch nurses for you, here at home, or in a specialized facility." There it was, the fatal blow. They did not even wait for the corpse to get cold. He was proposing to sell my legacy to pay for a nursing home with my own money, while they kept the rest. I felt a deep nausea, but I kept my mask securely on. "A specialized facility," I repeated, savoring the words as if they were a poisoned candy. "Wow, Ryan, always thinking about my well-being. In the hospital, I had a lot of time to think. And you are right. Maybe it is time to hand over the reins." Ryan's eyes gleamed with the greed of a shark smelling blood in the water. "Do you really think so, mother-in-law?" "Of course. You cannot take it with you to the grave, right?" I said, and I reached my hand into the pocket of my skirt, where the gold coins weighed comfortingly against my leg. "In fact, there is something I wanted to tell you too. Something I never told Ashley because, well, because I wanted it to be a surprise for when I passed away. Ashley returned at that exact moment with a dirty plastic cup filled with lukewarm water. She handed it to me with a trembling hand. "Here you go, Mom." "Thank you, sweetie. I was just telling your husband how glad I am that you guys are here, because I need your help with something very delicate." I took a sip of the water, which tasted like dust and negligence, and I continued, lowering my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. They leaned in instinctively, drawn to the secret like moths to a flame. "You see, before my fall, I withdrew a large amount of cash from the bank. I did not trust the tellers. You know how things are nowadays." "Money?" Ashley asked, and I saw her pupils dilate. "How much money, Mom?" "My entire life savings. Thousands of dollars and a few old coins." I lied about the location, seamlessly mixing truth with fantasy. I hid it very well right here in the house, but now, with this bump on the head I got when I fell... I touched my temple, faking utter confusion. For the life of me, I cannot remember if I put it in the toolbox out on the patio or behind the vanity in the upstairs bathroom. "In the upstairs bathroom?" Ryan exclaimed, looking up at the ceiling. "I was just in there and I did not see anything." "That is because it is behind the loose tiles, son. Or maybe I put it down in the basement inside the old washing machine. Oh, my poor head. I just cannot remember a thing." The lie had the exact desired effect. Their anxiety to leave, to haul the furniture out and flee before anyone discovered the robbery, completely disappeared. Now they had a brand new mission: to find the hidden treasure. If they left now, they would lose the chance to find that imaginary money. I had successfully anchored them to the house with the heavy chains of their own ambition. "Do not worry, Mom," Ashley said, stroking my arm with a fake tenderness that disgusted me to my core. "We will look for it. You just rest right here in your chair. Ryan, go check the upstairs bathroom again. I am going down to the laundry room." "No," Ryan said, stopping her dead in her tracks. "You go upstairs. I am going to the basement. Those stairs are dangerous." Sure, I thought to myself. He just does not want her to find the cash first. They were already starting to distrust each other. The seed of discord had been firmly planted. Wait a minute. I stopped them by raising my wooden cane. "Do not go just yet. There is something else." They froze, incredibly impatient, looking at me with the urgency of a dog wanting to go dig a hole. "What is it, mother-in-law?" "It is just that I also need to sign some papers. If we are going to sell the store, like Ryan says, I need you to find the property deeds. They were in my office, right in the bottom drawer. Did you guys happen to see them when you were cleaning?" Ryan tensed up. He knew they had turned the office upside down and found absolutely nothing. "No, Mom, we did not see anything," Ashley said. "Everything was really messy in there." "How strange," I mumbled, furrowing my brow. "I could have sworn I left them right there. Without those papers, we cannot do anything. Not sell, not transfer the business, not even collect the insurance. They are very valuable papers." "We will look for them, Mom. Do not stress yourself out," Ashley assured me, already with one foot on the first step. "Look carefully and look for the money, too. It will all be yours in the end anyway, right?" I smiled at her again. That sweet old lady smile that perfectly hid the fangs of a wolf. They scattered like roaches when the kitchen light turns on. Ryan ran toward the basement door, and Ashley took the stairs 2 at a time. I was left entirely alone in the foyer, listening to the frantic noise of their search. I could hear Ryan moving old boxes downstairs and Ashley ripping up tiles upstairs. They were destroying the house. Yes, but they were busy. They were distracted. I looked at the wall clock. 10 minutes had passed since my phone call. Arthur had to be close. The pain in my hip grew sharper, piercing, reminding me that my body was fragile, even if my spirit was forged out of iron. I let myself close my eyes for a second, resting my head against the hard back of the chair. "Forgive me, Lord, for the lies," I prayed in silence. "But you know they started this war. I am only defending the castle. Suddenly, the silence was broken not by the noises inside, but by the sound of an engine outside. A car pulled up in front of the house. I heard the solid thud of a car door shutting tight. Ryan shot out of the basement, his hands covered in dust and cobwebs. "They are here!" he exclaimed with a triumphant smile. "It must be the movers, or the guy buying the furniture. Ashley, come down!" Ashley appeared over the upstairs railing, her hair a mess and dirt shoved under her fingernails. "They are here already? Ryan, we have not found the money yet." "It does not matter," he yelled back. "We sell what we have right here and then we can take our time looking. Open the door." Ryan headed for the entryway, walking right past me without even a single glance. I remained seated, completely unfazed, with my hand resting over my chest, feeling the steady heartbeat of the legal documents tucked under my blouse. "Hold on, son," I said without raising my voice. "Not right now, mother-in-law. I have to attend to this gentleman. He is a friend coming to help with the cleaning." "He is not a friend, Ryan," I stated, and my tone shifted entirely. The sweetness vanished, replaced by the cold steel of sheer authority. "And he is not coming to clean." Ryan froze with his hand on the doorknob. He turned around slowly, deeply confused by the shift in my voice. He looked at me, and for the first time all afternoon, he saw something in my eyes that made him shudder. He saw clarity. He saw controlled fury. He saw Martha Ford, the businesswoman who had negotiated with sharks much bigger than him. "What are you talking about?" "I am saying do not open that door thinking you are going to get away with this." At that exact moment, the doorbell rang. It was a sharp, definitive sound. Ryan hesitated. He looked at the door. He looked at me. And then he looked up to where Ashley was hurrying down the stairs. "Open it, Ryan. What are you waiting for?" she insisted. Ryan turned the knob and swung the door wide open, expecting to see his partner in the moving scheme. But there was no moving truck. On the threshold, silhouetted against the orange evening light, stood the tall, slender figure of attorney Arthur Thomas, wearing an impeccable gray suit and holding a leather briefcase. And right behind him, in his dark blue uniform with his silver badge shining on his chest, was his son, Officer Reynolds, wearing an expression that spelled serious trouble. The air left Ryan's lungs in an audible gasp. He took a step back, tripping right over his own feet. "Attorney Thomas?" he stammered. What are you doing here?" Arthur did not answer him. His gaze moved right over Ryan's shoulder, ignoring him the way you ignore an annoying piece of furniture, and locked directly onto me. His eyes scanned the chaos in the foyer, the smashed TV, the stacked boxes, and finally landed on my figure sitting in the chair, holding my cane like a royal scepter. "Mrs. Ford," Arthur said, taking off his hat with deep respect. "I received your call. I see we arrived just in time." I stood up. It was hard. The pain bit into my hip like a rabid dog, but I got on my feet without any help. I stood as tall as I could, feeling how I reclaimed every single inch of my height and my shattered dignity. Ashley reached the bottom of the stairs and stood completely petrified when she saw the police. "Mom?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "What does this mean?" I walked slowly toward them, the sound of my cane keeping the beat of their sentencing. Click, clack, click. I stopped about 3 feet away. There was no need to pretend anymore. The mask of the helpless little old lady hit the floor and shattered into 1,000 pieces, just like the television. "What does it mean, my sweet daughter?" I said, and my voice echoed with the force of contained thunder. "It means playtime is officially over." I reached inside my blouse and pulled out the manila envelope with the legal documents. I slammed it down onto one of the boxes marked "Cell" and smacked it with the palm of my hand, kicking up a cloud of dust. "It means you both thought the lioness was dead just because she was sleeping. But the lioness woke up, and she is starving for justice." I glared at Ryan, who was white as a sheet, and then at Ashley, who was starting to tremble uncontrollably. "Counselor," I said without taking my eyes off my executioners, Please proceed. I want these two to know exactly who owns this house." The trap had snapped shut, and I, Martha Ford, was holding the only key. The silence that followed my statement was absolute, thick, almost suffocating. It was as if the air inside the house had turned solid around the four of us, trapping the dust floating in the evening sunbeams. Ryan still had his hand on the doorknob, completely paralyzed, his mouth half open in a grotesque grimace that hovered between the servile smile he had prepared for the supposed buyer and the pure terror of seeing the authorities on his doorstep. Attorney Arthur Thomas did not wait for an invitation. With the elegance of someone who knows exactly where he stands, he took 2 firm steps into the foyer, forcing Ryan to stumble backward. Officer Reynolds, a stocky man with a weathered face and a no-nonsense glare, stepped in right behind him, shutting the door with a solid slam that rang out like a judge's gavel, handing down a sentence. "Good afternoon," Arthur stated in an icy tone, completely ignoring my son-in-law and locking eyes with Ashley, who was still clinging to the stair railing like it was the mast of a sinking ship. "I see you two have been quite busy cleaning." Ashley stepped off the last stair, pale as wax. Her eyes darted from me to the lawyer, and from the lawyer to the cop. She tried to pull herself together. She tried to find that mask of the worried daughter she had used just minutes before, but it did not fit anymore. It was slipping off from the cold sweat of pure fear. "Attorney Thomas," she babbled, her voice shaking terribly. We were not expecting any company. My mom is just a little agitated from her medication. You know, the bump on her head." "There was no bump on the head, Ashley." I cut her off, and my voice came out raspy but firm, like sandpaper on old wood. "My hip broke, not my brain, and the only agitation I have is watching the rats eat my cheese before I'm even in the ground." Ryan tried to intervene, taking a step forward with that fake bravado typical of cornered cowards. "Listen here, mother-in-law, do not talk like that. We only wanted to help you. All of this," he made a vague gesture toward the stacked boxes and the broken TV on the floor, "is for your own good, to pay for the best care facility for you. You cannot be living alone here." "Quiet!" barked Officer Reynolds. His voice boomed off the bare walls of the foyer. Ryan shrank down, making himself incredibly small, utterly insignificant. I leaned heavily on my cane and took a step toward them. The pain in my leg was sharp, a hot spike shooting up from my femur to my lower back. But I used it. I used that pain as fuel. I forged it into a suit of armor. "For my own good?" I repeated, looking at them with a heavy mix of pity and disgust. Leaving me stranded in a hospital bed for 10 days without a single change of clean clothes was for my own good. Ignoring the phone while I cried tears of shame, begging the nurses for a bar of soap, was for my own good. Ashley opened her mouth to protest, but I silenced her by raising my left hand, the very same hand that had brushed her hair so many times when she was little. "Do not you dare lie right now, Ashley. Not in front of me. I have known you since before you even had a name. I know exactly when you are lying. You lie when the corner of your lip twitches, and right now, your entire body is shaking." Arthur cleared his throat and opened his leather briefcase on top of one of the boxes Ryan had labeled with the word "cell." The sound of the metal latches snapping open sounded like a gun being cocked. He pulled out a blue folder and held it up high. "Listen closely," Arthur said, with that professional tone that left zero room for doubt. "What I hold here is a notarized revocation of power of attorney, dated 3 years ago. In it, Mrs. Martha Ford voids any prior authority granted to her daughter, Ashley Ford, or her spouse. Furthermore, it clearly stipulates that any attempt to dispose of, sell, or place a lien on her assets without her express written consent will be considered an act of bad faith and immediate grounds for total disinheritance." I watched the color drain completely out of Ryan's face. His eyes were glued to the legal document like it was a death warrant. "But," Ryan stammered, sweating bullets. "We are her only family. She cannot do this. The law says, Arthur interrupted, adjusting his glasses, that the owner of a property has absolute rights over it. And the law also has very specific terms for what you two have been doing here: breach of trust, grand theft, and elder abandonment." "We did not abandon her," Ashley shrieked hysterically, the tears finally flowing, though not out of remorse, but pure frustration. "We were busy. We had to figure out what to do with the fabric store. The business was going under without her." I let out a dry, bitter laugh. "The business?" I asked. "I just saw the going out of business sign, Ashley. You were not saving the business, you were butchering it. You were selling it for parts like it was scrap metal. The Golden Needle was not just a store to you two, it was an ATM machine. And when the machine broke down, you decided to dismantle it to scrape out whatever change was left inside." I took another step forward, forcing Ashley to back up until she hit the wall. I could smell her fear, a sour scent, a mix of cheap perfume and cold sweat. "You underestimated me," I said, dropping my voice to a dangerous whisper. "You thought that because I am old, I am stupid. You thought that because I fell down, I was never getting back up. But you forgot something very important. I built this roof over your heads, I paid for the food in your bellies, and I, Martha Ford, am still the owner of absolutely everything your eyes can see." Ryan looked at Officer Reynolds, desperately searching for a way out, some twisted legal loophole. "Officer, this is just a domestic misunderstanding. My mother-in-law is confused. The pain, the painkillers. She surely does not know what she is saying. We have tenant rights. We have lived here for 5 years." The officer puffed out his chest. "What I see, sir, is the legal owner of this property asking you to leave the premises. And I see an attempted robbery. Those boxes," he pointed to the disaster in the hallway, "do not look like dirty laundry. It looks like you are trying to haul away the lady's estate." "Those are just old things," Ryan yelled in desperation. "Trash we were going to throw out." "Oh, really?" I intervened. I reached into my skirt pocket and pulled out the blue velvet bag, the very same one I had retrieved from my sewing machine barely 20 minutes ago, the same one they had been frantically searching for by smashing tiles and shoving furniture around. I untied the drawstring calmly and dumped the contents onto the palm of my hand. The golden gleam of the coins caught the little light left in the room. They were heavy, gorgeous coins, silent witnesses to 30 years of saving and scraping by. The silence was broken by Ashley's audible gasp. Her eyes locked onto the gold with a greed that turned my stomach entirely. Ryan looked like he was about to pass out. "Were you looking for this?" I asked, raising my hand so the gold flashed right under their noses. "Was this what you were hoping to find in the upstairs bathroom or the basement washing machine?" "Mom," Ashley whispered, taking a hypnotized step toward me with her hands outstretched like she was trying to touch a holy relic. "Mom, my God, that is a fortune. We can fix everything with that. We can hire the nurses. We can fix up the house." I snapped my fist shut, hiding the gleam. "No, Ashley. With this, I am going to live out my life. You two will not see a single ounce of this gold." I turned toward Arthur, who was observing the scene with restrained satisfaction. "Counselor, I want them gone, right now." "You cannot kick us out," Ryan exploded, his face flushed red with rage and desperation. "We have squatters' rights. We have lived here for years. If you throw us out, we will sue you." Arthur took a step forward, handing a copy of the document to Ryan, who took it with trembling hands. "Read Clause 4, Mr. Ryan. The life estate of the property allows the title holder to revoke living privileges from any direct or by marriage family member in the event of proven ingratitude, abandonment, or attempted alienation of assets. You both have met all 3 conditions in record time. You have 30 minutes to gather your personal belongings, clothes and toiletries only, no furniture, no electronics. And, of course, he glanced at the stacked boxes, absolutely nothing that belongs to Mrs. Ford. 30 minutes? Ashley broke into a sharp, ugly sobbing. Mom, please do not do this to us. Where are we supposed to go? We do not have any money. Ryan spent everything in our joint account on the down payment for the new truck. There it was, the ultimate confession. They did not even have their own savings. They had been living entirely off me. Parasites fattening up on their host, and now that the host was shaking them off, they realized they had no idea how to survive on their own. That is not my problem, I said, feeling a steel coldness coat my heart. It was a strange sensation, painful but necessary. I was amputating a gangrenous limb to save the rest of the body. You have 30 minutes, and Officer Reynolds will supervise every single bag you pack. You are a wicked old witch, Ryan screamed, totally losing his temper, lunging at me with his fists clenched tight. Officer Reynolds was much faster. In one fluid motion, he intercepted Ryan, twisted his arm right behind his back, and slammed him hard against the drywall. Hold it right there, the cop barked. One more move and you are walking out of here in handcuffs for assaulting a senior citizen. Do you understand me? Ryan groaned in pain and nodded frantically against the plaster of the wall. Ashley covered her mouth with her hands, utterly horrified. Go upstairs, I ordered, pointing my cane directly at the steps. Pack your clothes and leave my fur coats exactly where they were. I watched them walk up, defeated, deeply humiliated. Ryan was rubbing his shoulder and Ashley was sobbing loudly. I did not feel a single drop of pity, not 1 ounce. During those 10 nights in that hospital bed, I had cried every single tear I had reserved for them. Now I was bone dry. Now I was a desert. I collapsed into my father's chair, completely exhausted. The adrenaline was starting to crash, and the hip pain was returning with brutal vengeance. Arthur walked over and placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. You handled that flawlessly, Martha. You were incredibly brave. It was not bravery, Arthur, I mumbled, staring up at the ceiling where I could hear the rushed footsteps of the people I once called family. It was survival. The 30 minutes dragged by, slow and heavy. Officer Reynolds went upstairs to keep a close watch on them. I stayed downstairs, guarding my kingdom of cardboard boxes and dust. I looked at the shattered television on the hardwood. I will just buy another one, I thought. Money comes and goes, but dignity. Once you lose that, you never get it back. When they came down, they were dragging 3 large suitcases and 2 black trash bags stuffed with balled-up clothes. Ryan kept his eyes glued to the floor, his jaw clenched tight with helpless rage. Ashley's eyes were puffy and bloodshot red. As she walked past me, Ashley paused. Mom. She tried to say something, maybe an apology, maybe one last petty reproach. I am not your mom, I said without looking at her, keeping my gaze locked on the open door leading out to the dark street. I am Mrs. Ford, and this is my house. Goodbye. She let out a choked sob and ran out to the car. Ryan followed her, dragging the luggage, not daring to look at me even once. Officer Reynolds escorted them all the way out, making sure they got into the vehicle and started the ignition. I heard the engine roar, the furious sound of a loud exhaust, and then the screeching of tires speeding away down Oak Street. They were gone. Silence returned to the house, but this time it was different. It was not a scheming silence, nor the silence of abandonment. It was the silence of peace, a clean silence. Arthur closed the front door and threw the deadbolt. That metallic click was the sweetest music I had heard in years. Do you need us to stick around for a bit, Mrs. Ford? The lawyer asked, clearly concerned by how pale I looked. I shook my head. No, Arthur. You guys go get some rest. I just need to be alone with my house. I need to apologize to my walls for letting strangers inside. I will come by first thing tomorrow morning to handle changing the locks and to help you organize this disaster. I will bring breakfast." "Thank you, old friend." Once they left, I remained seated in the dim light of the foyer. Every bone in my body ached. I was starving and parched, and my house was turned upside down. But for the very first time in 10 days, I took a deep breath, and the oxygen reached the bottom of my lungs without the crushing weight of anxiety. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a single gold coin. I squeezed it tight. It was cold, but it quickly warmed up with the heat from my hand. I looked around at the shadows of my reclaimed home. I had won the battle. Yes, I had expelled the invaders. But as I stared at the empty staircase, I knew the war was not entirely over. Now came the hardest part of all, rebuilding myself from the rubble of my own shattered heart. I stood up with great effort, leaning heavily on my cane in the wall. "All right, Martha," I said out loud, and my voice echoed strong through the empty living room. "You have cried enough. You have fought enough. Now it is time to sweep." I walked toward the kitchen, dodging the boxes. I had to throw away all that rotting food. I had to clean up, because tomorrow would be the first day of the rest of my life, and I had no intention of living it surrounded by garbage. That first night without them was the longest and simultaneously the quietest night of my life. When the engine of Arthur's car faded into the distance and the deadbolt on the front door gave its final metallic click, the house seemed to exhale a sigh of relief it had been holding in for 5 years. I sat back down in my father's chair, right in the middle of the foyer, still cluttered with boxes, my cane resting between my knees and my hip, throbbing to the rhythm of a grandfather clock. I did not turn on the lights. I preferred to let the darkness be my blanket, hiding the disaster my own flesh and blood had left behind. I dragged myself to the kitchen with the raw determination of a wounded soldier. Hunger was gnawing at my stomach, but the urge to purge my territory was vastly stronger. I opened the refrigerator and the sour smell of curdled milk and rotting vegetables hit me again. I did not feel disgust this time, only a cold resolution. I pulled out a heavy-duty black trash bag and started emptying everything out. Sticky jars, moldy containers that once held home-cooked meals made with love, empty cartons. Every single thing went straight to the bottom of the plastic bag. I did not sleep in my bedroom that night. I just did not have the strength to climb the stairs. And to be perfectly honest, I did not want to look at the blank spots on the walls where Ashley had ripped down the family photos. I made myself comfortable on the living room sofa, covering myself with a wool blanket I salvaged from one of the boxes labeled as trash. My body ached terribly, yes, but my soul felt significantly lighter. For the first time in half a decade, I did not have to sleep with one eye open keeping watch over my purse, nor did I have to listen to conspiring whispers coming through the drywall. I slept with the deep slumber of a castaway who has survived a brutal shipwreck and finally washed ashore, completely alone, but alive. The next morning, the sunlight streamed through the window without asking for permission, illuminating the dust floating in the air. At exactly 8 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. It was not a remorseful Ashley. It was Arthur, true to his word, accompanied by a locksmith and bringing with him the aroma of fresh coffee and pastries that slowly brought me back to life. "Good morning, Mrs. Ford," he greeted me, observing my disheveled appearance with utter respect, without a single ounce of pity. I brought some reinforcements. While the locksmith drilled into the front door, producing a high-pitched screech that sounded like absolute heavenly music to my ears, Arthur and I ate breakfast at the kitchen table, which I had scrubbed down with bleach in the early hours of the morning. "Changing the locks is step 1, Arthur told me, blowing on his hot coffee. "But we really need to talk about the legal side of things. Ashley and Ryan are definitely going to try and contest the revocation. They are going to claim senile dementia. I guarantee it." "Let them claim whatever they want," I replied, dunking a piece of pastry into my hot coffee. I I have the hospital reports, I have the nurses' testimonies regarding my abandonment, and my mind is clearer than a mountain spring. Plus, I have the gold. And gold pays for the very best lawyers in town, Arthur. Maybe even better ones than you, if you are not careful. He let out a hearty laugh that made his spoon clink against the ceramic mug. That will not be necessary, Martha. Based on what we walked into yesterday, no judge with half a brain is going to rule in their favor. But you should prepare yourself. It will either be dead silence or dirty warfare. People like them do not accept defeat with any sort of dignity. That exact same day, I hired Mary. She was not family, thank God. She was a sturdy nurse with strong arms and a very easy smile. Highly recommended by Dr. Stevens. When I interviewed her, sitting right there in my still cluttered living room, I made myself crystal clear. I am not looking for a daughter, Mary. I already had one, and she ended up costing me far too much. I am looking for a professional, someone to help me bathe while my bone heals, someone to help me bring some order to this pigsty, and someone who knows exactly when to keep quiet. I pay a very good wage, but I demand absolute loyalty. Mary looked me dead in the eye, gave a firm nod, and immediately put on an apron. In just 3 days, the house was entirely transformed. The cardboard boxes vanished, and the remaining furniture went right back to its proper place. The smashed television went straight to the dumpster, and I bought an even bigger one I could actually watch without having to squint through my reading glasses. But the most important thing of all was that the sickening smell of stale air and bitter betrayal completely evaporated, beautifully replaced by the scent of fresh lavender and lemon wood polish. The real trial by fire came a week later, when I finally decided it was time to return to the Golden Needle. Mary helped me get dressed in a sharp burgundy-tailored suit I had kept tucked away in my closet. I put on my makeup, carefully concealing the dark circles that still lingered beneath my eyes, and I put on my best earrings. I stepped out of the taxicab right in front of my storefront with my cane, firmly in one hand, and my brand new set of keys in the other. The going out of business sign was still right there, taped to the glass window like an ugly scar. I felt my blood hit a boiling point. I used the rubber tip of my cane to tear a massive hole right through the paper. Then, using my bare hands, I ripped the rest of it down, crumped it up into a tight ball, and tossed it right down the street's storm drain. "Roll up that security door," I yelled to my employees, Carol and Mr. Jenkins, who were waiting on the sidewalk with long faces, fully believing they had just lost their jobs. The moment she saw me, Carol burst into tears and ran over to hug me, but she stopped right before making contact, clearly terrified of hurting my fractured hip. "Mrs. Ford, we thought you were never coming back. Your son-in-law told us that you—" "My son-in-law is an absolute moron and my daughter is a thief," I declared loudly, projecting my voice so that all the neighboring shop owners who had stepped outside to snoop could hear every single word. I am the boss around here, and as long as I am still breathing air, this door rolls up every single day at 9 in the morning sharp. Now let us get back to work. Stepping back inside my store felt like taking my first real breath of air. The smell of fresh fabrics, cotton threads, and pearl buttons was the best medicine I could have ever asked for. I spent the next few weeks meticulously checking inventory, undoing all the shady backroom deals Ryan had tried to close, and getting my accounting books completely back in order. I discovered they had stolen plenty from the petty cash register, of course, but the vast bulk of the business capital was completely untouched, entirely thanks to my natural, deep-seated distrust that led me to bulletproof all the major corporate bank accounts years prior. The real-world consequences for Ashley and Ryan did not take long to arrive, and I must confess that I watched them unfold from a distance with a very cold, almost clinical satisfaction. First came the phone calls. My house phone rang at all hours of the day. At first it was demands and furious screaming from Ryan, threatening me with absurd, baseless lawsuits. Later, once they realized Arthur had fortified my legal position into an iron fortress, The yelling quickly turned into desperate begging. "Mom, please," Ashley would cry into the answering machine because I never once picked up the receiver. Ryan lost the down payment on the truck because we could not make the monthly payments. We got evicted from the apartment we tried to rent because our deposit check bounced. We are living out of a cheap roadside motel, Mom. I am so hungry. I would listen to her voicemails while sipping my chamomile tea in the afternoons. It hurt me. Of course it hurt me. She came from my womb. She was my little girl. But then my mind would drift right back to those 10 days in that hospital bed. I would vividly remember the price list they had drawn up for my own furniture. I remembered that they had left me for dead long before my time was up. And then I would firmly press the delete button. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that Ryan tried to get hired at a few other local shops, but I made absolutely sure to spread the word around town. In the retail world, a man's reputation is worth its weight in gold, and his was dirtier than a barnyard floor. He ended up taking a job as a freight loader at the downtown warehouse district, breaking his back unloading heavy crates like he never once did while living under my roof. Ashley, according to what Carol told me, managed to get a job at a cheap, run-down strip mall salon, sweeping up clumps of hair and scrubbing dirty towels. The little princess who wanted to inherit a kingdom without lifting a single finger now had to bow her head just to scrape by. Karma never loses an address, my grandma used to say, and she was so incredibly right. Life was finally handing them the bill, and it came with massive late fees attached. A couple of months later, I had my one and only face-to-face encounter with them. I was walking out of Sunday morning church service, leaning lightly on my wooden cane, which I now used more for pure elegance than actual necessity, when I spotted them. They were standing on the opposite sidewalk, waiting at the city bus stop. They looked completely worn out, gray and defeated. Ashley's clothes, which used to be perfectly flawless, looked wrinkled and cheap. Ryan had lost a noticeable amount of weight, along with that smug arrogance that always defined him. Our eyes locked from across the asphalt. Ashley made a sudden motion to cross the busy street, her eyes welling up with a truly pathetic glimmer of hope. I simply raised my chin high, elegantly adjusted my silk shawl over my shoulders, and turned my back on her, stepping right into the idling taxicab that Mary already had waiting for me at the curb. I did not even give them the satisfaction of a nod. Silence was my final lesson to them. Complete indifference is the absolute price of betrayal. The complete transformation of my life was slow, but absolute. With the parasites finally gone, my resources truly blossomed. I ended up selling off a portion of the old gold coins. Not because I needed the extra cash to buy groceries, but simply because I wanted to treat myself to all the little luxuries I had denied myself for 40 straight years, while desperately trying to save up for their inheritance. I repainted the entire exterior of my house. Goodbye to that sad, depressing mustard color. I had it painted a vibrant, sunny yellow with bright, pure white window frames. I filled the front garden with massive, blooming rose bushes. I bought brand new furniture, comfortable modern pieces, the kind that just wrap around you in a warm hug the second you sit down. I officially hired a store manager for the fabric shop, a young, incredibly honest kid that I am personally teaching the entire trade. I still go in, of course, but I am no longer a tired slave strapped to the checkout counter. Now I just drop by to supervise, to greet my loyal, long-time customers, and to drink hot coffee in the back office. And I traveled. At 75 years freshly turned, I boarded an airplane for the very first time in over 2 decades. I flew out to Sedona, Arizona. I went to see the Red Rock Canyons, eat authentic southwestern chili, and drink expensive craft wine. I went entirely on my own, joining a travel group full of divorced women and widows who, just like me, had finally discovered that life absolutely does not end when your children move out, not even when your own children betray you. One beautiful afternoon, sitting on the open terrace of a luxury resort in Sedona, watching the setting sun paint the ancient canyons a fiery red, I felt a profound peace completely fill my chest. I reached into my designer handbag and pulled out the very last gold coin, the one I kept strictly as a good luck charm. It sparkled brightly under the twilight. I thought about Ashley. I thought about the deep pain of losing my little girl, not to death, but to pure, ugly greed. But I also understood that this profound loss had been entirely necessary. In order to truly find myself again, I had to completely lose my role as the blindly devoted mother. I had to stop being the frail little old lady who was just in the way, so I could go back to being Martha Ford, the strong woman, the ruthless businesswoman, the sole owner of her own destiny. My life right now is very peaceful, but it is certainly not lonely. I have Mary, who has become an incredibly loyal companion. I have Arthur, who comes over to play cards with me on Friday nights. I have my wonderful employees and my brand new travel friends. And most importantly, I have my dignity completely intact, shining far brighter than any piece of pure gold. I am Martha Ford. They broke my hip, they broke my heart, but they absolutely could not break my spirit. And here I stand, completely upright, with my wooden cane in one hand and the reins of my life firmly in the other, watching the sun rise every single morning, shining just for me.